from the University of Glasgow, an MSc in Mathematical Sciences from the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences in Ghana, and a BSc in Mathematics from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. Her journey from being a major in mathematics to becoming a researcher in computer science is fueled by her joint passions of problem solving and programming. She has received multiple awards, including endorsement as an exceptional promise by the Royal Academy of Engineering. She's been honored by the University of Glasgow and the UK Women's Engineering Society for advancing computing education and innovation. As the founder and lead of Computer Science Academy Africa, CSA Africa, she has empowered over 500 young Africans across 11 countries through programming workshops, and she has developed and taught Python programming with over 2,000 students. She has flown a very, very long way to be here with us today, so please join me in appreciating and welcoming Professor Sofiat Ola Sepetan.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Mr. Carlson, and thank you everyone for coming to listen to me today. It's been a pleasure being in Chicago, and I've traveled, thousands of miles to come here to tell you about the math I do, which is on margins, and I'm so excited to share my research with you. So as Mr. Carlson has introduced, I'm Dr. Sophia Olaosebiku. I'm a lecturer in the School of Computing Science at the University of Glasgow. And today, I want to talk to you about the beauty of mathematics and how it ties in to matching problems. So I'm just going to get started without wasting too much time. Okay, that's forward. All right, so what are matching problems? And how I want you to reason this is thinking of allocating sets of things to another things. And the example I have right up there on screen is an example of a kidney exchange program. Now imagine two people who would like to swap kidneys around. There's a family somewhere, someone among them, say Alice, has a kidney problem, and her dad, Bob, would like to donate his kidney to her, but they are not compatible because of blood type. And there's another family somewhere with the same issue, Jane and Diane. They'd like to swap kidneys just to help each other stay alive, but they are also not compatible. However, if Jane gives his kidney to Alice and Bob passes his kidney to Diane, the transplant can go on because those two pairs are compatible. This is called the kidney exchange problem. And this is an application that the National Health Services in the UK has been running an algorithm to find optimal sets of allocation between kidneys and transplant patients who are on the list. So this is one great example of matching problem. And there is also an example which you probably already know. In the United States, the National Resident Matching Program uses an algorithm to allocate doctors to hospitals. Also, there's an algorithm that allocates pupils to schools. And this is massively applied in the US. In New York, Boston, it is what we call the school choice problem. There is also the allocation of students to projects. At my university, when students get to their final year, they get to work with a professor on their dissertation project. And the professors proposes loads of projects for the students to work on. And the student gets to decide what sort of problem they'd like to do. They rank it according to first choice, second choice, third choice, and they often are told to select maybe 5 or 6 projects, but they get to choose what they want. And then we use an algorithm to allocate students to projects, making sure that we do not exceed the quota of the lecturers or the quotas of the project. For instance, last year in my school, one of my projects got really subscribed. A lot of students wanted to do it. But because my maximum quota was 6, they had to find other choices for them. So these are some of the applications of matching problems. Now, this is another example right here, just fleshing out the doctor's allocation to hospital. When doctors get to a certain point in their career, they need to be placed into hospitals to go on and study more about their program. Could be pathology, could be pediatrics, could be optician, whatever it is they want to do. But they get to choose. They have a preference. And this is how the matching program works in the United States. The hospitals also get to decide what student they would want to take on for their programs. This could be based on an exam or their decision on how great the doctors are. The hospitals also have capacities, which lets the person doing the allocation know the maximum number of doctors they can place to those hospitals. So the example on screen here, Dr. A has a first choice and a second choice, and they love to go to their first choice if possible. But in practice, we often find that this is not possible. Everyone may not get their first choice just because there is not enough places to go around. Now the question is, how do we make that decision? How do we make a fair decision? How do we decide which doctor goes where? How do we do this matching allocation? And that's where people like me comes in. We're going to do a crash course in graph theory. Has anyone heard of graph theory, graphs, vertices? Not a lot of you, so my job here is going to be great. By the end of this talk, you will all know what graphs are, and you can go on to use graph theory to do amazing stuff. Now, a crash course in graph theory. And why are we talking about graph theory? The reason we are doing this is because we are trying to solve this problem of allocating doctors to hospitals efficiently. You can see right there on screen, I have just 5 doctors. But very soon, you will see an example of the United States applications involving 47,000 doctors. And just merely looking and pairing with pencils is not going to work. So we need to find a way to do this efficiently. And that is where mathematics comes in. Mathematics is what led us to look at how we can use mathematical structures, known as graphs, to solve the problem of allocating doctors to hospitals. So how do we do that? Well, you can see the doctors on screen are modeled as dots, teeny tiny dots, like circles. Those circles in graph theory are known as vertices. Vertices. And then the hospitals as well, we model them as vertices. And we partition that into 2. And we use a line to connect a doctor to a hospital if they have that hospital on their list. But what you also need to know is these type of graphs, where the sets are partitioned into 2. Doctors on one side, hospitals on the other side, and there's a line connecting doctors to hospitals, but there is no line connecting hospital to hospital. Why? Because we don't care about matching the hospital to the hospital. We care about matching the doctors to the hospital. Now, when you have a practical problem that you can model in this way, such that there is one set on one side, another set on the other side, and lines joining them, we call that graph a bipartite graph. I hope you're taking note. This can take you 3 months to learn if you're in school. So we call the graph a bipartite graph. Again, it's made up of vertices and edges. And the beauty of this mathematical structure is that it allows us to solve this problem efficiently. It actually allows us to visualize our problem. And there is thousands of research that has been done within graph theory that you can use to model your problem and come up with a logical step that you would follow to assign these doctors to these hospitals fairly. So that's that about the doctors and hospitals. Now I want to move on to look at another practical problem. That's the stable marriage problem, but I'm going to call it matching dancing partners. Imagine you want to pair dancing partners, and that's the paper you all have with you. We have Elizabeth, Jane, Lydia, and Charlotte. Does anyone know about the Pride and Prejudice movie? Yes, awesome. All right, so this is going to be fun. We want to match them to their dancing partners. And we want to do this in such a way that when we pair these people to their matching partners, there are no 2 partners or 2 people, there's no boy and a girl who would rather be together than be with who you've currently paired them with. And those numbers you see there, for instance, Elizabeth would love to be matched with Wickham. Wickham is her first choice. But if she doesn't get Wickham, she would love to be matched to Darcy. Darcy is her second choice. And if Wickham and Darcy are taken, then she wouldn't mind going to Bingley. And Collins is her last choice. So all of these women have preferences over the men they would want to dance with. And the men also have choices over the women. And when we model this as a graph, we just learned about graph theory, bipartite graph. We can put the women on one side, the men on the other, and use a line to join the two together. Again, the line tells us which woman would love to dance with which man. And then we study this graph, and we come up with a solution that no one can break. Again, the problem here is not just matching a man to a woman. We need to make sure that at the end of our solution, at the end of our process, this solution is strong, and it's stable, and no one can mess with it, and they are all happy with their partner. Okay? So, let's do some matching, guys. Are you ready to match some dancing partners? Yeah! Awesome. Now, I need you to help me. You've been given this assignment. You all have this piece of paper with you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I wish I could give you longer, but my presentation is timed. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And your job, at the end of the day, is to match just one man to one woman. Okay? You can do this in groups if you want. I need you to get your hands dirty. All right, your time starts now. Remember, you want to make sure that the matching you produce, that everyone is happy. And we can find a man and a woman that would rather swap than be with their current partner. A lot of staring. Has anyone figured out the solution? Loads of hands. Does anyone want to shout out their solution? Yeah? Jane and Bingley? Elizabeth and Darcy? Lydia Wickham? Charlotte Collins. Amazing. 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 I think that's a very strong solution. All right, let's proceed. Thank you very much. What's your name? Thank you, James. So for my next presentation, James is going to be one of the dancing partners. All right, thank you. So let's move on. So you've been able to play with this example. Like, it's probably taking you a few minutes, but you've been able to match them in such a way that that solution stays stable. Now, the example I have on screen, some of you might have this as well. You might have this solution. And the problem is when you have this sort of problem, well, that's a funny thing to say. The problem is when you have this sort of problem. Scratch that. Okay, so when you have this sort of situation, how do you decide who goes where? It's easy when we have just 4 people. Imagine if we have 40,000 people. And typically, if I have this problem, the first thing I would probably do, as a sane human being who doesn't do maybe much of mathematics or who doesn't know a lot about stable matchings would be, how about we give Elizabeth to Wickham? So we just start from the first person, right? Elizabeth goes to Wickham, Jane goes to Bingley, Lydia wants to go to Bingley, Bingley is taken, she goes to Wickham, Wickham is taken, then she goes to Darcy. And then Charlotte goes to Collins because the first 2 choices on our list are taken. And this is a solution, but this solution is not strong. It's not going to last the test of time. And why is that? Can anyone see the problem with this solution? Yeah?
Most of the people have the third choice of
Which is fine. They could have the third choice or first choice. Can you see any reason why that's a problem? We can clearly see that not everyone would get their first choice. It's not possible. Why? Because 3 people want Bingley as their first choice. Bingley can't dance with 3 people. He can only dance with 1. So obviously, some people would get their second choice or third choice. And that's not a problem. But there is a problem with this solution. Can anyone see it? Yeah?
The order that you accepted matters.
Mm-hmm. Any other problem? Try not to get the big guys. Yeah?
Not a lot of people like Collins.
Not. Yeah, I feel sorry for Collins. Yeah? Can anyone see the problem? Like, can you see any two people who would destroy this solution? Who are those people? Charlotte and Collins and Charlotte are actually, Collins is actually the sad guy in this solution. All right, let's proceed. I wish I had all day. I would make you figure out the answer. The problem with this solution is Lydia would love to go to Wickham. That is her second choice. Lydia would prefer to be with Wickham instead of Darcy. So after we've passed on this solution and told everyone who to dance with, Lydia stylishly goes to Wickham and says, "Hi Wickham, I really would love to be with you." And then Wickham looks at the list and says, "Guess what, Lydia? You are my first choice. And I would prefer to dance with you instead of Elizabeth." And then Wickham and Lydia decides to go together, and then they leave Elizabeth stranded and Darcy stranded. And then that destroys the solution, and you have to start again. And we call Lydia and Wickham a blocking pair in graph theory, in the mathematics term. We don't want a solution where two people can go off, form a private arrangement, and they get to be better. In this same solution, Darcy and Charlotte would be better when they combine powers, because Darcy gets to get his third choice, and Charlotte gets her better choice as well. So again, these are not things that we want to happen. Charlotte and Darcy forms a blocking pair. So this solution is not stable. Now you can ask a very brilliant question like, can we find a solution that no pair can undermine, irrespective of how I come up with this combination of preferences? And the answer is yes. He helped. James helped. He came up with a solution where Elizabeth goes to Darcy. Is that what you have? Jane goes to Bingley, Lydia goes to Wickham, and Charlotte goes to Colin. And if you triple check this solution, you won't find any blocking pair. You could check quickly. Charlotte would like to go to Bingley, right? She goes to Bingley and said, "Hi Bingley, I'd like to be with you." Bingley checks his list. Nah, I'm with Jane, and she's my first choice. I'm not going to accept you. Then Charlotte goes to Darcy. "Hi Darcy, I would prefer you over Colin." Darcy looks at his list. "Sorry Charlotte, I'm with my first choice." And you can see that if you keep checking, everyone going to something better than what we've given them, they are not going to undermine this solution. And this in stable matching, this in graph theory is what we call a stable matching. A stable matching is a pairing with no blocking pair. And if you, as an allocator, has been given this problems where there are two sets of people or agents or entities, it could be boys and girls, it could be doctors and hospitals, it could be students and projects, it could be pupils and schools, it could be anything. But if you have problems where there are two sets of entities and there are preferences of one agent over the other, stable matching is very important. When the two sets have preferences over one another, you want to make sure that you have a solution that can last this test of time. Okay? So this is a very interesting exercise that you've just done. There's another one on screen, but there is not a lot of time. You are all going to receive an email with this particular example, and I want you to go home, take it as a take-home assignment, and figure out the solution for matching these doctors to these hospitals. You have to make sure you do not exceed the hospital's capacities. And you have to make sure that there is no doctor and an hospital that would rather be paired together than remain with the current assignment. Who knows? Maybe you end up managing the National Residence Matching Program in the US. So this is going to be done at your own pace. Okay? And the importance of this problem is not far-fetched. This is someone in the United States in 2023 who was assigned to emergency medicine at Carolinas Medical Center. This is a March day that happens every year in the United States. And for this year, there were 47,000 doctors that were matched to 43,000 hospital positions. Now imagine I give you that paper, loads of papers of course, or maybe the data of all 47,000 hospitals. And I give you their preferences. They have preferences over, say, 10 hospital positions where they would love to be matched. And I give you the capacities of the hospitals. Do you think you can figure out a solution that is stable with 47,000 doctors? No. No. Why? Why do you think you can figure it out? Yeah?
Oh, never mind, sorry.
Yeah? Because you're kids, oh! Yeah. It's going to take forever if you try to do this manually. And when you even do that, like, how do you know that the solution you've just come up with is stable? 47,000 is a lot. Now, this is where mathematics comes in handy. We design a set of algorithms. What are algorithms? They are pretty much like a recipe, a set of instructions you follow to solve a problem. Computers can help us solve this problem efficiently because computers are fast, but computers are not smart. We have to tell the computer what to do. Many of you here could think that the computer has the answers to all your problems, but I promise you they don't. If you pass this data set of 47,000 doctors to a computer and say, can you find me a solution that is stable and that has this property and that has this property, it may not be able to help. Why? Because somebody needs to tell the computer what to do. So if it's a problem whose solution is not known, the answer is not going to be there. Okay? So we need to design an algorithm, and an algorithm again is just a set of instructions that the computer can follow to find the solution to our problem. And why would the algorithm help us? Well, it will help us automate this thing. Problem of manually allocating the doctors to hospital is not possible. So an algorithm helps us automate that. It also helps us with optimization. Because we've seen that it's not just about matching the doctors to the hospital. We care about solutions that are optimal in some sense, according to the agent's preferences, the doctor's preferences, or the boys' or the girls' preferences. And we also care about efficiency. We don't just want to design an algorithm that will take forever. We need the algorithm to terminate efficiently, within seconds or minutes, rather than it running forever. Trust me, there are algorithms that can take the age of the universe to produce a solution. But that's not the topic of this discussion. So we care about these three properties in our algorithm. Now you can ask, is it possible for us to design an algorithm that would always produce a stable solution given any problem instance of either the doctor's hospital or the stable marriage? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. That problem was solved by these two amazing researchers in 1962, Gale and Shapley. They produced the Gale-Shapley algorithm that we can use to find a stable solution for this problem we have. And just to bring in some cool maths, but we're not going to talk too much about it. When you want to come up with an algorithm, you need to first of all write it like a set of instructions. Imagine you want to give a friend a recipe for baking a cake. You would probably say, measure 3 cups of flour, then pour in half, whatever, of butter, then whisk it. You're writing those instructions in English. It's the same thing with a set of algorithms. You need to write those instructions in English. It looks like gibberish, but trust me, it's English. And this set of instructions in English is what we refer to as a pseudocode. So this is the pseudocode for the Gale-Shapley algorithm that would help solve our problem. And when you're done writing the instruction in English, remember we want to pass on the algorithm to the computer. The algorithm doesn't speak English. You think it does, but it doesn't. The computer speaks zeros and ones. That's the language the computer speaks. But do you speak zeros and ones? Can you understand if I just start saying 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Like, you can figure out what I'm saying, but the computer does. So how do you communicate your algorithm to the computer? That's where Python programming or Java programming or C programming comes in. You need to use a programming language. So this is the Python program for the Gale-Shapley algorithm we've just done. You have this code, you pop in the data set, 47,000 doctors, 100,000 doctors, I don't care how large it is. You hit run, and this code gives you the solution that matches the doctors to the hospitals, and that solution is stable, and we can prove it's stable. But again, I'm just showing you the code. There's not enough time to go through this today because of time. What I want us to do is a quick execution of this Gale-Shapley algorithm. I want to show you why this algorithm works actually. Why does it produce the solution we saw that is stable, that no one can break? And very quickly, we will just run through this example again. So this is how the algorithm works. Someone has to propose. Let's assume that the boys are proposing to the girls. We'll start with Bingley. Bingley proposes to Jane. Jane looks at his offer. She has no offer, so she accepts it temporarily. This is how the Gale-Shapley algorithm works. Then we move on to Darcy. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth. Again, she has no offer, so she accepts Darcy's proposal. Then Colin proposes to Jane. Again, you're proposing to the person at the top of your list because you want a very good dancing partner. You don't want them to step on you. So Colin proposes to Jane. Jane looks at her list. Bingley is way at the top. And she's like, I can't be better off pairing with Colin. She rejects Colin's proposals. Then Colin moves on to Elizabeth. The same thing. Colin is way at the bottom of Elizabeth's list. Elizabeth is not going to get better by accepting Colin's. So she rejects his offer. PT Colin. Then Collins moves on to Lydia. Well, Lydia does not have anyone right now. So she's better off taking Collins anyway. It's called deferred acceptance. You accept something until something better comes along, then you reject them, you let them lose. It's quite sad, but that's the spirit of the Gale-Shapley algorithm. And then we move on to Wickham. Wickham proposes to Lydia. Everyone wants the best offer. Until you get rejected, you keep going to check, would you like to accept me as your dancing partner? So Wickham proposes to Lydia. And Lydia sees that, oh wait, Wickham is better than my current partner, which is Colin. She says no to Colin, bye Colin, this is the end of our proposals, and says yes to Wickham. And because Colin has been let loose, he has to keep going down to the bottom of his list. Colin moves on to Charlotte. Charlotte does not have any dancing partner, so she accepts Colin's. And that's the end of the algorithm. The algorithm stops when everyone either has a dancing partner or they've gone through all their lists and no one accepted them. And this is a stable matching solution that is produced by the algorithm. I would want you to think for a minute why this particular set of steps work. I would have loved to hear your thoughts, but again, that's a take-home for you. But I'm just going to go through it very briefly with you guys. The reason why what we've just discussed now, the process of the men proposing and the women either accepting temporarily or rejecting it, that leads to the stable solution is because the boys always propose to the girls in the order of their preference. And the girls would only accept the solution or the proposal if they don't have a better option at that moment. So if a boy prefers a different girl over his assigned partner, the girl has either rejected it or accepted something better. So this means that there's no way for us to find two people who would form a private arrangement in such a way that they become better than staying with what we currently have so that they can mess up with the system. That can happen. Because if that can happen, the algorithm would have found that particular pairing in the first place. So whatever we find is stable. And that's the logic behind the stable matching algorithm. Now what I want you to take away from this is how does math comes into play. Like I've told you, we study this problem using mathematical structures called graphs. But you might be wondering, well, how do you do it? What's the logic behind it? How does this tie into maths in general? Well, binomial graphs itself, that mathematical structure that we use to model the problem, is from an arm of discrete mathematics and combinatorics. And I believe some of you are doing combinatorics, and maybe discrete maths, or at least you've heard of it. For those who've heard of graphs. So, if you know combinatorics and discrete maths, you can dabble in stable matchings very easily. There are still loads of problems to be solved. Also, the process of designing the algorithm step by step, checking what to do next, after we do this, that's problem solving, and you all do it. Whenever you're trying to solve a problem, and you decide what to do next, and what to do next, and what to do before the next problem before the next step, that's problem solving. And when we design the algorithm, we don't just stop there. For the kidney exchange, lives are at stake. We need to make sure whatever solution we produce is actually very correct. And for the hospitals as well, and the doctors, we need to trust that when we decide to match a doctor to a hospital, they will not go back and destroy our solution by forming an arrangement with another doctor. So we need to prove mathematically that this is correct. And logical reasoning and proof of correctness is what you do in algebra. So the algebra you're doing now is preparing your brain for writing proofs. And this could be proved by induction, by contradiction, or by counterexample, or by construction. And these are the things I do day to day. Designing algorithms, writing proofs on the board, trying to figure out if this is correct or not. Okay? Interestingly, the application of all of the things we've just talked about goes beyond doctors' hospitals, student and projects, and boys and girls. It extends to engineering as well. And this is a book that has applied matching theory for wireless networks. And the research is ongoing now, and matching theory is being used in resource allocation problem in wireless networks going into 6G. This is the end of my talk now. I'd like you to also know that this research has won a Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in 2012, just because of the vast application and usefulness of all of the algorithms of all of the problems that the algorithms have been able to solve. And you might wonder, but we already have the Gale-Shapley algorithm. Why should we care? Why is anyone still solving this problem? What is still there to do? Oh, there are loads of problems to solve. When we allow doctors who are married to form joint preferences over the hospitals they would like to be assigned, that is called the hospital residence problem with couples. And that way, the NRMP can match doctors who are married close together. They'll keep them in hospitals that are geographically close so that we don't break their marriages. And when preferences have ties as well. For instance, I like 2 hospitals. I'm not sure which I would like to make my first choice or my second choice. I don't mind which one I get. I put them together in a tie. That changes the problem. That changes the solution. When we move into student project allocation as well, there are so many variants and constraints that makes the problem different. And barely running the Gale-Shapley algorithm is not sufficient. So we need to come up with new ways to manipulate the algorithm so that it accommodates our constraints and produces the right solution for us. And these are some of the problems that I and my colleagues are working on at the University of Glasgow. And I hope I've been able to inspire you with stable matchings and the fun bit and how mathematics comes into play. Thank you very, very much for having me. Questions, if anyone has. There's a microphone here, and there's another one here. And there are also 2 microphones up there.
Hello, thank you for coming. My question is, in the 4 characters from Pride and Prejudice, if the characters who identify as women propose to the characters who identify as men,
yeah,
does the algorithm come out the same?
Beautiful question. Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. When the man proposes, the solution kind of tilts towards the men because the men are proposing to their first choice. But when the women are the ones proposing, the solution is optimal for the women. In fact, we have examples that shows that given a certain problem or instance that looks like this, the stable matching solutions could be exponential. Like there could be a lot of them. So the stable matching solution is not unique. That's what you need to know. However, depending on the person that proposes, the solution becomes optimal for that particular group. So if the men are proposing, then the solution is men optimal. And if the women are proposing, the solution is women optimal. And we have research where people are also trying to figure out what we call fair stable matchings. where the optimality is not just tilted to the men or the women, where we try to come up with a solution where everyone is as happy as possible. Does that answer your question? Brilliant question. Thank you very much. Do we have any other question? Yeah?
Thank you so much for coming. This was a great presentation. I was wondering, prior to the algorithm that for the 1962 study, what was like the method for? I guess these matching problems have probably existed forever. So what was the method for solving them? Was it just going by hand through all the possibilities?
Hopefully not. The interesting thing here is, let me go back. So, yeah. Rob, who is right up there, is a professor at Stanford. He's the one in charge of the National Resident Matching Program in the United States, here and his colleagues. They were already designing or using some form of algorithm. So if they weren't doing it manually, like these were professors that know they could use computers and mathematics to solve this problem. And Gale and Shapley, the guys that, I said came up with a paper in 1962, also published their own paper independently of Rob, actually. So this was a problem that was going on independently. Gale and Shapley were working on the 1962 paper. Rob and his colleagues were also using something to come up with a solution for NRMP. It just wasn't published. And when Gale and Shapley published their paper, they realized that, oh wait, this is what we've also been doing. Yeah, that's as far as I know the story. Whether they've done it manually by hand, I have no idea. But I hope not. Yeah, but thank you for the questions. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you all. So upper school students, MS and US faculty, if you're free during lunch today at 1 o'clock, please come to room 159 in the math wing to chat further with the professor. This concludes the morning ed.